In this video recording, we're going to illustrate the procedure on how to set up a base and rover inside a Carlson Cert PC. To begin, we're going to tap on the Equipment tab, and we're going to go into GPS base. And the setup procedure for setting up a base station is very similar to setting up a rover. So we're going to tap on the make and model of the receiver that we're going to use for our base station. In this case, we're going to specify the Carlson brand of equipment for the base. And in this case, we're going to use the BRx7 or a BRx7 as our base station. We're going to tap on the Communications tab, and we're going to use Bluetooth communications to communicate between the tablet device that we're using and the receiver that we are setting up. We're going to specify a Bluetooth communication channel, and we're going to tap on the wrenches and gears icon out to the right of Bluetooth type. We're going to look for the Bluetooth receiver, and right now it's not in our list, so we're going to tap on Find Device, and the tablet will now look for the available Bluetooth devices that are out here and available out on the job site. So as it's going to look for them, it's going to find available receivers. In this case, the receiver at the bottom of the list, ending 2009, is my base station. So I'm going to highlight it and tap on green check. Then in the upper right-hand corner, I have a Bluetooth icon with a pair of plug icons. I'm going to use that to set up a Bluetooth bond between the tablet and the receiver. So the tablet and the receiver are now starting the communication process.
Successful connection.
And they are successfully connected. What I want to do next is tap on the Receiver tab and indicate the antenna height. So in this case, I've pre-measured the receiver to be 5.94 feet off the ground. So I'm going to go ahead and indicate that measurement and green check. It'll indicate the elevation mask and how many positions per second that I want to have it read. So I can indicate 1 hertz, 2 hertz, or 5 hertz. Maybe in this case, maybe a 2 hertz reading will be sufficient for what I want to use. I'm not going to use IMU in this case. And do I want to auto start the base every time I set it up? Yes or no? I'm going to say no to that. And for the advanced button, I'm going to also choose the constellations that I want to use. So I'm going to go ahead and say, do I also want to use maybe the SBAS constellation in here? Sure, why not? And we'll go ahead and hit green check. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and green check. And for RTK, what I want to do is indicate what kind of type of method do I want to use to get corrections from the base over to the rover. So for my device, I'm not going to use a cable or a generic device. What I want to do is utilize the internal radio of the BRx7. So when I tap on the internal radio, I'm going to go ahead and tap on the wrenches. And for this, I do want to make sure that I actually have a UHF radio antenna hooked up to the receiver prior to getting this started. So I tap on the wrenches, and what I want to do now is specify the radio settings that I am licensed for in my region. So when I go through and set this up, I'm going to choose then the
configuration successful.
The settings that I have available to me again, and I would have specified the type of protocol that I want to specify, whether I'm using Trim Talk, PDL, Satel, whatever I have been again using or licensed for. And I will then specify the power level, the channel, and the frequency that I'm going to be utilizing. I'm also going to specify, in this case in the US, the 12.5 kilohertz channel spacing, and we'll get that specified and set up here. And for the risk of not giving too much information for people to get in trouble with, we will let these settings be region and user specific. So we'll get these set up and let you use your own values. Once we set up the base radio frequency settings, channel spacing, all that information, we're going to go ahead then and continue on with the base position. So we can establish either a new position, whether we're going to read from GPS, enter the latitude and longitude of the base, or enter grid system coordinates, or in this case, go ahead and say, I want to read from GPS. So I'm going to go ahead and say read from GPS, And we'll just take maybe, how about 60 readings here right now. Green check and green check. So right now with the base in its current position, we're just going to take those readings and use those readings to establish where the base is and get its position, and then use that for the job site to commence. Okay, we fast forwarded here to the end of our 60 readings. We've got our base position, and do we want to continue with the base setup? And we'll say yes. So what we want to do is we'll actually store this position in our point list, and we'll call this point number 1, green check, and we'll call this OP for occupied point, and green check. Continue with setup, yes. And what I like to do is if I'm going to put the base back out on this point in the next day's setup, for example, I'm going to reuse this position over and over and over again. I like to store this position to a base station file. So when I go through and say save these settings to a file, I'm going to go ahead and say yes to this. So when I'm going to save this out to my job, I'm going to say this is a job 1A reference file. So the next time out here, I'm going to reuse this position and load a previously saved file. To configure a GPS receiver to operate as a rover to a base station inside a server PC. So we're going to tap on button number 3, GPS rover. So the rover setup is very similar to what we've seen in the base station setup. We choose the communications tab and indicate the Bluetooth type. We would also indicate the device, which is going to serve as the rover, in this case, the serial number ending 1137. We'll tap on the Bluetooth icon up in the upper right-hand corner and the connect button. So we're going to do a Bluetooth connect at this point, leaving this dialog box open. In this case now, if there was a Bluetooth communication between the tablet and the base station as earlier, that Bluetooth communication would be severed, and the Bluetooth now with the rover would be established. We'll take a look at the receiver tab, and we can see here now we have an antenna height of 2 meters. In this case, we could change that very quickly. So if we had 1.8 meters, we could say 1.8 M, for example, and green check, or in this case, we do in fact have it on a 2 meter pole, so we're going to say 2M and indicate that it is on a 2 meter pole height. Again, we're going to use the IMU, and that information is discussed in an alternate video, so we won't recover that here. And the position rate we'll say, for battery's sake, is we'll say maybe use a 2 Hertz. In this case, a position rate of 5 Hertz is required for IMU, so we'll keep that as okay, so the IMU will be disabled in this particular case. For RTK, what we want to do now is indicate that the RTK corrections are going to be coming not from data collector internet now, as discussed in an alternate video, but this time we're going to say use the internal radio of the BRx7. Now, before we begin, the next thing we want to do is make sure that a UHF radio antenna has been attached to the BRx7. Failure to have an antenna radio can harm the radio that's inside of this receiver. So to begin, what I want to do is tap on the wrenches and indicate then the type of radio protocol that I want to use, along with the frequency and channel spacing and information that is going to match up with basically the same kinds of settings that I had just established with the base. So to make sure that you're going to use, you want to make sure these are the same settings that you're licensed for. So we won't show you those settings. Those are, again, user and location specific as specified by your local FCC or communication provider. So we won't show you those here, but make sure that you are licensed, because failure to abide by local licensing rules can subject you to potential problems. So we'll show you the rest of the setup here in just a moment. So I've established my radio type and frequency settings, so channel spacing. So I've gone ahead, exited out of the wrenches configuration settings. So I'm going to go ahead and tap on green check, and we'll finish the configuration of the BRx7, and now we'll move into the remainder of the GPS rover setup. and we'll take a look.
Setup completed successfully.
So we've completed the successful configuration of the rover, and we'll take a look now, and we'll see how we are getting a solution type. And we'll take a look then at our monitor sky plot, and we will then move from the float solution that we currently have, ideally into a fixed solution. And we go fixed, and then momentarily we should get hopefully a sure fix solution then with all the satellites that we have overhead. Now we are also nearby a relatively high-powered cellular communication tower nearby, so we might have some interference that's being impeded here with the relatively low power setting that we've established on our radios, so we do have to bear in mind that we might have some environmental situations that are occurring. But right now we are in a fixed solution, so we're ready to go to work. Thank you for watching.